Howdy, fellow bodies. Welcome to Dise and Bodily's Voice, an audiobooks podcast. Today, we are reading part 3 of 4 of Little Red. Enjoy. Dawn surged into the den, illuminating it with cool light. Clari was up with the light, so she moved toward the entrance. But the wolf stepped out in front of her, looking worried. "I can't leave?" she asked, sitting on the balls of her feet. Twyla blinked her pale yellow eyes, sitting down in Clari's intended path. She continued to stare. "Could you not stare at me? It's very unnerving," Clari said, not sure if Twyla could even understand her. To her surprise, Twyla looked down at her paws instead of at Clari, which made her feel better. "You can understand me?" The wolf nodded, not raising her eyes from her paws. "I need to get home," Clari stated, gesturing to the wide, cold world outside. Wolf moaned and sat up, blinking blearily at the pair of them. "Ugh, I'll go with you," he yawned and stretched in a downward dog. Clari examined her new acquaintance. The fur she thought he had been wearing yesterday appeared to be actually attached to his skin. It looked to be of the same density and texture as Twyla's. "Is that your fur?" Clari asked sheepishly, gesturing broadly to Wolf's entire person. "Yeah, sick, huh? It's useful out here in the cold. I have to admit, I am a little jealous of it," Clari chuckled, watching Wolf strap on the junk from before. "It's great, until you're alone with a woman and she wants you to..." Wolf glanced at Clari out of the side of his eyes. "How old are you anyway?" 19, why?" Clari asked, following Wolf and Twyla out of the entrance. "I didn't want to go into details with a minor," Wolf shrugs, stretching his arms wide and stretching his back in the freezing morning air. In the morning light, the snow looked periwinkle blue, and a few birds could be heard calling out to each other, though the sound was dampened by the fresh layer of powder on the ground. Clari stretched as well. As warm as the den was, it wasn't the most comfortable of lodgings. But beggars can't be choosers. Clari was quite grateful that she didn't freeze to death outside, and she was aware she owed a life debt to Wolf and Twyla, which she hoped could be easily and quickly repaid. "So, cookies to Grandma. Seems like that mission is impossible," Wolf murmured, peering disappointedly at the basket that had once been home to sugar cookies. Their sweet smell radiated from the basket, as if they were still there. Clari looked down at the significantly lighter basket in her hand. Not even a single crumb had been left by Twyla. "She will have to savor the sentiment alone, I suppose," she sighed, daring a quick sour look at Twyla, who snuffled along the ground, laser-focused. Clari looked upwards, turning on her heel as she got her bearings. "We shouldn't be too far now. Her house is just a touch farther northeast, I think." "Onward ho!" Wolf shouted, gesturing broadly to the northeast passionately. "What did you call me?" Clari asked sharply, starting to stomp in the general direction of northeast, which was, unfortunately, along an incline. "It's an old-timey expression or something. I read it once," Wolf assured her, trotting along beside her. "Oh, H-O. I know what you mean now." Clari laughed at herself. "That was silly of me. You know, I cannot understand why you live all the way up here, where it is even colder and harder to live, when the world is warm enough now that in some places I have to shave to keep cool." Clari mulled the question over in her mind as they walked. She had never been anywhere else, so she didn't have any good measuring sticks for comparison. Her family had left the shelter city several generations ago and came up here. For what? I don't actually know. I bet my grandma has an idea of it, though. The wolf nodded. "I bet she does." Silence, punctuated by the steady, heaving crunches of their trek through the snow, and Twyla gaily panting and bounding along several yards ahead of them. "I'm Not much for conversation. I'm not used to talking to people much beyond my mom, Clari said apologetically, pausing to catch her breath. Me neither. Twyla and I talk, but not usually with words, Wolf admitted. He shifted on his feet and sniffed the air. Clari looked around, sheepishly sniffing the air as well. The smell of wood on fire was a rare smell these days. Most nations had agreed that it was in the planet's best interest that all remaining trees were to be preserved, and where possible, cultivated. Someone burning wood was on an active tirade against the planet, or was set in their ways, which is often the same thing. Clari and Wolf picked up their pace, marching uphill and into the trees. The little cabin leered out of the trees like a little kid playing hide-and-seek. Out of the chimney, which most homes had for looks and a traditional feel these days, curled gray smoke. Clari grunted. We got her an aerocarbon heater this summer. I don't know why she's burning wood. They passed by a tree stump, which is to say, it was likely the middle bit of the tree, and only the top had been chopped off, since the rest of it was covered in snow. Out of the surface of the stump, a glinting axe was lodged, menacing in its capacity to kill a tree that had survived far longer than humanity had existed. A vile use for a crude tool. Along the outer wall of the cabin, stacks of freshly cut logs radiated the dull sorrow of loss and limited potential. Once the wood was burned, that was essentially the end. Clari bit her chilled lip, approaching the door with some trepidation. It had been several months since she had seen her grandmother, and she was worried that it wasn't just a cold that was making her ill. Clari knocked, loud and hard. Grandma hadn't had the best hearing lately. The door creaked open, and Grandma peered out at the small crowd at her doorstep.
Hello there. Who are you?
She asked in a thin, quiet voice. Her hands quaked on the edge of the door. It's me, Clari. Mom sent me to check on you, Clari said sweetly and loudly.
Oh,
Grandma cooed, fluffing up like an old dove.
Come in, it's cold,
she exclaimed, pulling the door open wide. Wolf and Twyla hesitated, but eventually made their way over the threshold. Twyla's claws clicked and clacked warmly on the wooden floors as she trotted immediately off to the fireplace. Something deeply instinctive drew her to the flame, which she sprawled out in front of with a satisfied yawn. Clari looked around. The interior decorating was distinctly dated, but primarily practical and utilitarian. The familiar furnishings were draped with layers of multicolored and multi-scented blankets, most neatly folded. Mom told me you had a cold. How are you feeling? Clari ventured, setting the basket she had been carrying down beside the door, then followed her grandma into the kitchen. Thank you for listening to Part 3 of Little Red. If you enjoyed what you've heard, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a lovely evening.